Yeah.
Good.
They're leaving afterwards, right?
Hmm?
They're not staying for a regular meeting.
No,
No.
no, they weren't planning on it. No presentation there. As you recall, in mid-January, we engaged a firm called Market Street to start to do something called working on a strategic action agenda. We've raced, and I think I can speak for them as well as myself, to this point. We've conducted a days-long series of focus groups and individual meetings with the four previous, you're not previous yet, Mayor, with the current sitting mayor and the three previous mayors. And we've also had a survey online open for a couple of weeks, which I was really impressed. We had 195 responses to that survey. So we did really well in getting responses to that survey. This is Matt Tester is the project or team lead. Renata, and I'm sorry, Renata, I forgot your last name. Robinson already. And they're going to make a presentation on what they found. What we're going to see tonight is kind of a summary of the data. The work group had their first meeting today through the lunch, and we had a very good discussion. We had some very good comments and thoughts that were brought up during that time. Those will be folded in as they move forward, which the final step will be working toward a strategic action agenda, as we're all aware of that contract. And without further, Matt, I'll let you get started.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And thank you all for having us back here. We're honored to be back, and today we intend to take no more than 20 minutes, as we've been advised of your time, really just to go over the research from the first phase of this process, which is research-based, and it's mostly the findings from that. But I want to set up for you, well, very quickly, I'm Matt Tester. This is Renata. We'll both be presenting a little bit today. I'm going to provide just a little bit of background, very brief background about the national and metro area economies and what's been going on through the recession and the post-recessionary environment, really just to tee up what Renata's going to tell you about the Snellville economy. And so with that, I'll just continue. This is a cartoon that ran on November 4th, 2008 in the AJC, and it's a Mike Lukovic illustration asking, are we there yet? And despite the technical end of the recession by economists' measures, I would argue that the pain is still being felt to an extent that nobody would know that. This is a chart showing you what has happened to employment levels after each of the most recent recessions, since the 74-76 recession. The line at the top is equivalent to peak employment before the recession hit. And all I want you to see from this chart is that, with one exception, in each of the subsequent recessions since 74, the recovery period has gotten longer. When the bar gets back up to the x-axis, recovery to peak employment has occurred. What you see in this blue bar there at the bottom is what's going on right now. We're nowhere near return to peak employment. In fact, you can see here that through the 90s in the United States, the top bars that you see here are the United States. The bottom set of bars is Metro Atlanta. Across the United States in the 1990s, employment grew by 21.7 million. That's the greenish yellowish bar at the top. Population grew by 32.5 million. What happened in the 2000s? Population continued to grow at a rate of about 27.7 million, and we lost 1.5 million jobs across the country. What you see at the bottom is the story is approximately the same in Metro Atlanta. The red bars indicating jobs, the yellow bars indicating population. Across the 90s, both grew at a rapid clip. And what happened in the 2000s is that still in Metro Atlanta, throughout the 2000s, there was a net loss of jobs. This shows you a little more acutely what that means. The horizontal bar going across at the x-axis is equivalent to 1999 employment. So if the red bar is Atlanta, what that means is we have all job creation since 1999 in the Metro Atlanta area has been wiped out by the recession. You can see the strong growth occurring beginning really in late 03, early 04. You see it peak at the top, plummet through the recession, and you see that it hasn't fully recovered yet. And so what we're talking about here is severe loss of jobs across the metro area, across Georgia, neither of which have fully recovered back to that time. The implications of that are vast. I'm really only going to touch on one data point here, and that's household income. And what you see that in Metro Atlanta, which are these two set of bars, and the United States, which are these two set of bars. These are the poorest people in Metro Atlanta, in this red section here. You can see that this proportion has increased between 2000 and 2010 in Metro Atlanta, which is a contrast to what's going on across the nation. I'm sorry for those of you who can't see over here on the wall. I don't want to fully block the video camera here. The point being that while median household income rose by 19.2% across the country over that 10-year period, it only rose by 2.3% in Metro Atlanta. So the point simply is that the effects of the recession are acute here in Atlanta. They continue, and that much more recovery is necessary to get back to a place where communities are thriving. This is a common measure. You see unemployment rates. I simply want to show Georgia remains below the national rate of 8.3% in the most recent figures. Georgia is now at 9.7%. This chart, this graph indicates total employment change over the last year, the last measured year, which is December 2010 to December 2011. You can see there's been negligible change in Georgia over the last year. The white states indicating negligible change from just about 0.5% of decline to 0.5% of gain. Georgia falls in that range. While some states around the southeast are beginning to pick up at a somewhat greater clip, there's been great growth in Texas, Oklahoma area, and throughout the Midwest in some areas. So you can visualize here that the South continues to struggle. Georgia continues to struggle. That's the environment that Snellville finds itself in. It's the broader environment. It's not just the Snellville story. So we're going to talk now about some of those things going on in Snellville. It would be unfortunate to read those, to listen to us and think that what we're saying is acute to only Snellville. This is a story across Gwinnett County. It's a story across Metro Atlanta. So this is simply to let you know that some of these indicators are not what you're going to want to hear. Some are positive. Some are showing signs of life. But Snellville is not alone in the struggles that it faces. It's certainly a story for all of us here in the Atlanta area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Renata. That's incorrect. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the process. Eric already set it up. I just simply want to show you it's really a two-phase process. The second phase has a draft and a final phase. Here we are presenting the research that comprises the competitive profile. That's the basis for what will come next, which is developing a strategic action agenda, action steps for the city to take going forward related to economic development. It includes stakeholder input, which Eric mentioned. There was a survey that went out. We did interviews and focus groups. It includes a site assessment because there's an attempt through this process to tie economic development goals and actions with realities on the ground, development and redevelopment opportunities in Snellville. So we're interested in looking at that. We've conducted the site assessment. We contracted with the site location professional. That will figure more heavily into the next phase. The research was conducted in concert with the competitive profile, but it will be worked into the next phase of research. So that's where we are. I don't want to belabor, since we've presented in one of these sessions before, what the full scope of the process is, but it's building towards an economic development plan that identifies those business sectors that are appropriate here in Snellville. And that will link to some extent to what's going on in Gwinnett County, what's going on in the region, to plug in what are those things that are appropriate to co-opt here in Snellville, those benefits that it can draw from the broader region. It's also intended to take the small business and entrepreneurship environment to the next level, creating an environment where such businesses and people are supported, where they can thrive and where they're comfortable locating their business and continuing to operate. Also to coordinate some other efforts that are going on. There's been some work in entrepreneurship. There's been some work in site assessment and financial analysis of what's going on. This is an attempt to tie those together into an actionable agenda for Snellville. So we thank you again for allowing us to be here to present that. Renata's going to come up and talk more specifically about Snellville.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So it's a lot of data that I'm about to present, so I'm going to try to whip through it, but I'm still speaking in non-nerdy terms. So starting with population, everyone knows that Gwinnett County has rapidly grown over the years. Over the 10-year period, Snellville grew as well, kind of on par with the state, but of course not as rapidly as Georgia. What was alarming though is that from 2005 to 2010, the city actually lost about 800 people. and the population here is comparatively older when compared to Gwinnett, Georgia, and the United States. About 45% of Snellville's population is 45 and up. Conversely, about a little less than a quarter of the population is between 25 and 44, which is a prime working age population. So with this makeup, the issue is that there will be workforce issues and issues in making sure that the older population has the resources that it needs. And just to linger here just for a second, the 45 and up group is bigger in Snellville than any of the other three, and this 25 through 44 group is smaller than all the other three. Snellville is diversifying. Over the 10-year period, Snellville lost white residents while it gained residents in all of the minority groups, particularly the Black community. In 2000, Blacks made up 5.4% of Snellville's population. In 2010, it now makes up 29.3%. So this just lets you know that Snellville has different issues that it has to deal with. Historically, Snellville has been a higher income suburb. But if you see here, from over this time period that we looked at, Snellville's median income declined by 2.5%. On the other hand, Gwinnett's median income increased by 5.2%. And the reason that this matters is if the trends persist, Gwinnett's median income will surpass Snellville's, which will be entirely new for this community. So we took a look at the distribution of household incomes. Why did the median income decrease? What's going on here? So if you look here, there were two income brackets that grew. This 25 through 49, right below 50K, and then this upper, over 100,000. These upper middle class households, however, decreased. So it's pretty significant. Snellville has very low poverty when compared to the county, state, and nation. However, it was alarming to see this huge increase from 3.3% to 11.1% in child poverty. Now, this increase, while steep, was still lower than Gwinnett, so I do want to put that out there, but it was still pretty high. Did you have a question?
Yeah, when you talk about the Gwinnett County data, is that the unincorporated part of Gwinnett, or is that all the rest of Gwinnett besides Snellville?
This is all of Gwinnett to include Snellville.
Okay, okay. The entire county, okay.
Yes.
In the child poverty rates, on the growth of, is there more children now, just simply in that growth, that makes that number sprout up?
I can tell you just a second. Marginally, from 2000 to 2010, there were only about 650 new kids. Hold on. Did I read that correctly? No, there were only 430 new people under 17. So this could possibly be linked to this. So we have this increase in the 25 through 49. That might just mean that this increase on the lower end of their income bracket. We also took a look at educational attainment. Snellville is doing well, but comparatively, the good news, Snellville has the lowest percentage of adults 25 and up without a high school diploma. They also have a really high, comparatively high percentage of adults with a graduate degree. However, when you look at the change, even though there was a decrease in adults without a high school diploma, and even though there was the increase in graduate degrees, there was a decrease in bachelor's degrees that evened that out. So even though there was that increase in graduate degrees, you still have about the same amount of people with at least a college degree. Now, what I did really want to point out though is that even though it's a good thing that you've increased the number of people with high school diplomas, because this is shrinking, that means you have a fewer percent of people with high school diplomas that are going on for college credits or technical training.
Does it just mean they're trying to enter the workforce earlier?
Possibly. So we took a look at the schools, and just to note here, we took a look at all the schools that have physical addresses in Snellville. We do plan on adding Grayson to this, but as of now, it's not in this report. In terms of academic performance, the best schools are Brookwood Elementary and Norton. And I say that because they're the only two elementary schools that surpass the Gwinnett County proficiency percent. And that's just to say the percentage of students who tested either proficient or above on the CRCT. Middle schools, neither one surpassed both math and reading. Both surpassed in reading, but neither surpassed in math. And then, of course, your star, Brookwood, is one of the best. But South Gwinnett also surpassed Gwinnett County in terms of high school graduation test proficiency.
They didn't mean AYP?
No, and I'm coming to that. That's my next slide. So looking at graduation rates, Brookwood and Shiloh surpassed the county and the state, but South Gwinnett did not, and that's the reason that they did not meet AYP because of their graduation rate. So looking at workers, only 513 people both live and work in Snellville. Now this is not something that's alarming because a lot of suburbs have this trend, but it's still something significant that we have to look at when approaching this project. So you have nearly 9,000 people coming from outside of Snellville to work in Snellville, and you have another nearly 9,000 residents leaving to work. So now in the report, we took a look at employment within Snellville. We also took a look at resident employment, so where the residents are going. This chart shows the employment in Snellville. So the people working here can live anywhere, but these jobs are located in Snellville. If you look here, about a third of the jobs here are in retail and accommodation and food services. And both of those lost jobs over the last 2 years. And just to note, 2009 was the latest data available because it's the city level data. Now, if you were to count this, there are more sectors that experience job growth in Snellville than the sectors that lost growth. But because there's such a high concentration in these two sectors, there was still overall job loss. And here's something that we found pretty interesting. Residents make more than the workers, Snellville workers. So 43.8% of residents make over $3,333 a month, whereas less than a quarter of people who work in Snellville make that amount. On the other hand, 19.7% of residents make less than $1,250 a month, while 36.9% of Snellville workers make less than $1,250 a month. And this just speaks to the skills mismatch. So you have a lot of residents that are leaving for higher income, higher skill jobs than are available here in the city. So moving on to entrepreneurship, the city has several small business and entrepreneurship programs. The Snellville Entrepreneur Council, the South Gwinnett High School Entrepreneurship Alliance. But when we asked on the survey, are you aware of the existence of support systems in Snellville? 63.3% of people said no, they did not. So what that means is that even though you have the things going on, you have to do more to let people know about them and market those. when we came for focus groups, a lot of people told us that one of the barriers to economic development here was eyesores. There were a lot of vacancies, so we took a look at that. And the homeowner vacancy rate is pretty much on par with the county and the state. And there was, there was some change over the 10-year period, but nothing alarming. If you look at the rental vacancy rate, Snellville surpassed Gwinnett County, and it's just a little bit smaller than Georgia. But the biggest thing to know here is this point change. So from 2000 to 2010, there was a 7.5 percentage point change in the vacancy rate. In terms of home ownership, historically Snellville has had a higher home ownership rate, and this is still current. And even though there was a decrease in home ownership between 2000 and 2010, as you can see, that's across the board. So it's not a Snellville issue. And of course, we all have seen that home prices have taken a dip. And again, that's not a Snellville issue, that's a Metro Atlanta issue, a national issue. But 1.2 note here is that from November 2010 to November 2011, Snellville did experience the highest decrease in home sales prices, and that was 14.5%. But the good news is that one of the issues that we heard focus group and interviewers say over and over was that they were worried that Snellville did not have affordable housing for young professionals and empty nesters. But as you can see, Snellville has the lowest home prices, so that's not true. One of the issues might be, and we can't support that with data because there's no city level data available publicly, but one of the issues may be the housing stock. So younger people and empty nesters may just have an issue with the larger lots and want, more diversity in their housing. And just to reinforce that point, we calculated an affordability ratio, which compares the home values to the household income. So the lower the ratio, the more bang you get for your buck. And so, of course, as you see, Snellville's affordability ratio is 2.09, which means that houses are much more affordable here. Rentals, however, are not affordable here. It shot up astronomically over this time period, and while before in 2000, rent was cheaper than the county-wide average, it's now more expensive than all three at $908 a month.
Now, that's rental of private homes, or, there's not, we don't necessarily have any.
This is anything that's being rented. So it could be a home, it can be a townhome, it can be an apartment, whatever.
But since we really don't have any apartments in Snellville, it's kind of skews that figure a little bit, don't you think? Because mostly, I would say probably 95% of the rentals in Snellville are single-family dwellings.
Well, it really,
That was true in
this
2000.
is linked to that vacancy rate. So even though your rental stock may be different from these others, it is what it is. And it's probably why the vacancy rate has gone up so high.
Yeah, it's probably not an apples to apples comparing it to the piece that's being rented, I guess is.
Okay. One of the major issues that we heard over and over and over and over was traffic.
Okay, next.
So, the point here is that you have 64% of your residents driving 30 minutes or more to work. And you can see how much different that is than everywhere else. And 17.5% of those people are driving over an hour. So of course it's a pretty big obstacle. So we took a look at how this has gotten, how this progressed over the years. It has definitely gotten worse. If you look from 2000 to the 2007, 2009 aggregate, the brackets under 30 minutes are decreased. The brackets over 30 minutes are increased. So, kind of scary. We also kept hearing people say wanted a walkable community. There was nowhere to walk. So we took a look at Walk Score, which lets you visualize where you can walk. And red signifies that you have to drive. Green signifies that you can walk. So as you can see, Snellville definitely is car dependent.
But on that last chart, I think one thing we need to look at is that you can walk, for instance, on 124 there, you can walk once you drive there.
Right, right,
You can't walk from your house to there.
right. And I mean, all of these are like little retail pages.
Walking is good, Tom.
Oh, no, walking's great, driving there to walk ain't, that's not so great.
20 years later, you'll be right there.
I've got wheels on the bottom of my house.
So, one thing that we did hear throughout focus groups and interviews are that people definitely feel safe in Snellville. One thing that I do unfortunately have to note is that Snellville had a higher rate of assaults and larceny thefts than other places. However, overall crime is good here. Well, not good, but low. Crime is low.
Another edge.
Right. And finally, besides traffic, one of the areas of concern was political infighting. And so the issue with that is that competitive communities exhibit stability, unity, and initiative when they're going out trying to attract business investment. And so on the survey, we asked, in a brief word or phrase, what is one action that could greatly improve the business environment in Snellville? And a lot of those answers had to do with leadership. Leadership that cooperates, a mayor and council that work together, a smoothly functioning city council, repair the city's reputation in the area, positive government leadership. And it just goes to the point that perception means a lot. Perception is reality. So the brand of Snellville really needs to have a component of unity in there. And with that, I'll turn it back to Matt.
Thank you. Sorry, I realized we're taking a little bit more time than we said we would, but we felt safe showing that last slide because we are aware that that's not news to you all here. That's a refrain that we heard throughout the process.
I've never heard that before. This is brand new to me.
We submit that humbly. And also just wanted to point out just a little bit of the dynamics of the survey. We constructed it in a way that we could segment it out by the type of respondent. We had people identify certain things about themselves so we could look at what this X segment said throughout the survey, what Y segment said throughout the survey. This is just a little bit, we asked them to tell where they lived, and you see obviously most of them lived in Snellville, but also lots of unincorporated Gwinnett. Workplace was the top three overlapping in the Snellville region in terms of places of work by zip code. And also asked what their role was within their company. I found this interesting that we had lots of participation from entrepreneurs and small business owners. And so we think we have gotten lots of really good data and feedback based on that, especially considering that that's the primary component of the economy here in Snellville is small businesses. So some good authoritative feedback from that group. Here are just a few survey highlights. I'm not going to read them all, but they're embedded within the document in the same format so you can find them. But just a few key highlights is that most people said that they expect their businesses to remain in Snellville for the foreseeable future. And not just most, but over 90%, which is a very high percentage. Also that housing at the top end of the market might be wanting. So we asked people, we found out that executives found the housing stock in Snellville less attractive than did staff level people, small business owners and entrepreneurs. Also found that most respondents said that the ability of Snellville to attract talent from workforce from the entire metro region was considered a competitive disadvantage here. The town center concept in general had strong support, with over 3/4 of the respondents saying that it should receive high or very high priority for commercial development activity.
Man, on the center one, real quick, just
Yes,
back up, competitive disadvantage, what was the key component of that? Was it traffic?
We can infer that. We didn't actually ask for, we left a comment box open, but we can't tie individual responses to individual rationale. And also just asked what would have the greatest effect. Actually, we asked people to rank a series of inputs as to the effect that they would have. If you improve this factor, how much would that improve the overall business environment in Snellville? By far, the greatest response was transportation infrastructure, which again is something you all know, but we felt that it was important to quantify that. Are you asking a question? Okay.
Sorry.
That's all. Again, we're conducting a site assessment. We have obtained from the city 7 or 8 priority sites and asked our site selector to help us think about what's appropriate for these sites and these kinds of sites. So as we're thinking about how Snellville is going to develop going forward, what are those business sectors that plug in directly to development opportunities here? So we'll continue to process that through when we come back to you later in the process at the last meeting. As you see here, we'll be before this group again on Monday, May 14th, and we'll be able to talk through how some of these recommendations played out. We have a work group that's informing the process. We're meeting with them again to go over a draft version of the strategic action agenda, and we'll come back to you all with the ultimate findings of that and be willing to answer any questions and have any discussion you'd like to have. I'd like to open it up now, but also recognize we've taken some more of your time, so we'll field any questions you have now. Also, can provide cards for anyone that wants to reach out over email or phone.
Man, I have a question. I know this is probably too soon to answer because you haven't finished the complete analysis. From the businesses that are in town, what do you foresee the hunger is for newer businesses? What type of business? I don't want to talk about industries, but maybe
Sure.
businesses, because we're really not an industry
I
type.
mean, specific businesses?
Correct.
That's not something we asked. Was to say, we did ask, what kinds of business sectors do you see developing in Snellville? What's appropriate here? We did ask that question, and I don't have the data right in front of me, but that's something I can certainly get to you just to draw out what, you're asking what business owners said would be appropriate in Snellville?
Well, no, the citizens, as far as the businesses are concerned, and most of us probably know what they want to do on a daily basis. And sometimes there are businesses in town that a lot of other folks don't know they do exist. So what more of what type we need to have in Snellville? And
We heard healthcare spin-off type companies, more healthcare like consulting, IT type things, professional services for those higher skilled workers who want to stay in the city to work. I think we heard a little bit of light manufacturing.
Yeah, there was pretty strong support for information and technology, strong support for healthcare services, particularly satellite development around East Side, and generally professional and corporate services as well, customer care services, regional headquarters operations, even local headquarters operations, business support, those kinds of things.
did you get a tally approximately what kind of businesses we have in categories?
Yes, we do. We have that.
How many?
So,
approximately?
and Renato was presenting that, there's what was a third of the economy here is constituted by retail and accommodation and food services. The rest of it is a substantial amount of healthcare employment here. Most of these things, just as you drive through Snellville, or what you see, that bears out in the data for the most part. But yeah, we have that.
You have 15.4% other city in Gwinnett County, 11.3% outside Gwinnett County. Is it reasonable to assume those people live outside and work here? Is the reason they responded to this?
Yes, it's also possible that they just have some connection to one of the organizations that this was distributed through, and they just decided to respond. Unfortunately, once you put it out there, you can. But yeah, it's safe to assume they have some sort of substantive connection to Snellville. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to take it.
Could be Swanee, they want to take
True.
Is the data you presented, a lot of it is census data, but things like commute time, rent value, did that come from the survey, or how did you?
That's all census data.
It's all, everything is census data.
Well, not everything, but those things that you mentioned are
But then
census data.
the responses as far as things people wanted to see, that came from the survey.
What you see in the body text of the report, any chart that you see, that wasn't made up of survey data. The survey appendix pretty much stands alone, so any specific responses you want to see that are survey-based will be there.
But the last couple of slides you gave us was survey data.
Yes, and that was just to show you what was in them.
And so the survey data, I'm looking at the numbers, we roughly have 19,000 people in Snellville. 94 residents responded to the survey, and 195 people total responded. So we have less than 1/2 of 1% that responded to the survey. I don't think it's good. Is it average? I mean.
No, I wouldn't say that is necessarily inadequate. In a smaller community such as Snellville, we've had far lower response rates than that. And to be fair also, this is a somewhat focused process. We know it went out through multiple channels, but if this were a full community and economic development process where we engage absolutely as many people as possible, I would say that number is low. But for the purpose of what this was, which is more focused on economic development, more focused on getting this in front of small business owners, people that are employed here in general, I would actually say that surpassed my expectation for where this would go. But your point is taken, and if it were a full community process, I would say it were a little bit low, you'd hope to get a little bit higher, but.
So based on these inputs, statistically speaking, that would be sufficient enough to draw some sort of.
For this purpose, this is not a statistically significant survey. As we talked about last time we were here, it's not designed in such a manner that we could publish this
Ms.
in an
Robinson,
academic journal.
you said something about the poverty level, especially with the children. Where was that information taken from? How'd you gather that?
That was census data.
That was the national census data? The 2010?
U.S. Census Bureau, yes, 2020.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mayor, just as a reminder, I've set up 2 different briefing sessions, Thursday afternoon, 4 to 5, and Friday morning, 8:30 to 9:30, for any council member that want to come and just have further discussions about this, just so you know those time slots are out there and open. If those won't work, call me, and we'll find a time that will.
What was that?
Thursday, 4 to 5, and Friday morning, 8:30 to 9:30.